Revenge with Karen.
Just remember, you're replaceable. That was the last thing he said before walking out of my office, sipping his green smoothie like he'd just solved world hunger with an Excel macro. I sat there, gripping my stress ball so hard I popped the damn thing. Gel oozed onto my skirt. Fitting. I wiped it off with the last napkin in my drawer, the one I'd been saving from our department's Morale Monday 2 months back. For Devon, Langley blew through our lives like a designer hurricane with a trust fund and a LinkedIn addiction. He'd only been here 4 days. 4. But he walked into Harper Smythe like he owned not just the building, but the oxygen inside it. Designer loafers. Watch that probably cost more than my first car. A jawline sharp enough to slice payroll. The CEO introduced him with all the subtlety of a marketing campaign, a new visionary for strategic growth, handpicked from a top-tier firm. No mention of that firm's recent SEC investigation, of course. Just buzzwords: disruption, optimization, synergy. I'd been here 17 years, survived 5 CEOs, 3 buyouts, and 1 actual office fire started by a malfunctioning espresso machine. I'd seen golden boys come and go. I wasn't rattled, not yet. But Devon didn't waste time. First team meeting. Pulls up a deck titled out with the old, smiles, and proceeds to dismantle everything my division had built over the past 2 quarters. He called our work legacy-heavy and data-light. Told the board we were ripe for transformation. I had half a mind to ask if he even knew what our division did, but I played nice. Took notes, smiled, until our first one-on-one. He closed the door behind him, real gentle, sat in the guest chair like he was settling into a throne. Scanned my shelf, photos of my kids, a crystal paperweight from the time we hit a quarterly milestone, the bonsai tree I'd nurtured since my divorce. He glanced at all of it like he was casing the joint for a minimalist remodel. "You've been here a while, haven't you?" "I have," I said, "since before the Monroe acquisition." He gave a tight smile. Seasoned. Like I was a cast iron skillet he'd found at a garage sale. That's rare, but sometimes seasoning makes it harder to taste what's fresh. I didn't blink. Just said, "We've consistently delivered margin improvements and client retention above." He held up a hand. "I've read the reports. Solid, dependable. But we're entering a new era now and the board expects bold moves." There it was. The signal flare. He stood, tossed his smoothie cup into my trash can like it was a mic drop. Then leaned in, lowered his voice like he was sharing a trade secret. "Just remember, you're replaceable," and walked out. I stared at the door after it clicked shut. Felt that cold, creeping clarity I hadn't felt since I found my ex-husband's burner phone in the glove compartment next to a grocery list that didn't include my kids' favorite snacks, but did include cheap hotel scribbled in Sharpie. Replaceable echoed louder than the fire alarms from the 3rd floor's popcorn incident last month. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just opened my drawer, pulled out my folder labeled Leadership Transitions, and added a new tab. Langley D. Inside that tab, a post-it note with 3 words: watch, record, wait. They were gone before the ink dried on the announcement. Janelle from Analytics and Mark from Client Ops. 2 of my best. Janelle had a mind like a scalpel. Could break down a quarter's worth of churn data into 3 bullet points and a chart that made the CFO nod without blinking. Mark, he was the only one who could wrangle the legacy billing system without summoning the ghost of IT past. But Devon didn't care about that. He saw 2 mid-salaries, flagged them as duplicate competencies, and sliced them clean off the headcount sheet like a bored chef trimming fat off a steak. I found out via calendar invite. Urgent realignment, sync Devon Langley. We all knew what that meant. Harper Smythe didn't call things layoffs anymore. They called them strategic pivots. They called them talent streamlining. They sent you a PowerPoint instead of a severance hug. When I walked into that glass box of a conference room, Devon was already mid-spiel. "We've identified key redundancies in strategic delivery that, when optimized, increase cross-functional agility while reducing cost centers." I glanced at the slide behind him. 2 names, both struck through in red. Janelle, Mark. I didn't speak, didn't blink. Just stared until he glanced my way with that smug half-smile he used like a handshake. We appreciate the long-term contributions from those individuals, but in the spirit of forward-thinking leadership, I tuned him out. Because I knew what this really was. It wasn't forward-thinking. It was a milestone. A checkbox. The kind that triggers bonuses when you're VP of strategic growth, and your contract includes a 7-figure payout for executing operational realignment. I knew that clause existed, because 2 weeks ago, Devon had left his onboarding packet on the shared printer, rookie mistake. And I, being the helpful team player I am, scooped it up before the intern could slap a confidential sticker on it. Inside was the gold, pages and pages of legalese, but one sentence stood out like blood on snow. Performance-based signing bonus to be released upon successful completion of department restructuring within Q2. I highlighted it, scanned it, printed a fresh copy, filed it under Langley D, and now, watching him smile as he gutted my team to hit that benchmark, I understood exactly how the game would play out. But here's what he didn't know. 3 weeks before his start date, back when the leadership vacuum left us spinning, I'd sent a memo to legal. A dry, forgettable little document proposing a soft restructure of my department, just enough to flag organizational realignment in our compliance logs, buried in jargon, filed quietly, and dated before his contract. Devon thought he was lighting the match, but the fire was already smoldering. He just didn't smell the smoke yet. Still, I played my part, nodded when he asked me to reassess role synergies, parroted his nonsense about lean agility in front of the board. I even fake smiled when the CFO clapped him on the back and said, "This is the kind of initiative we need." Inside, I was a furnace. After the meeting, I walked the long way back to my office, past Janelle's empty desk, her little succulent still sitting there like it hadn't been evicted. Mark's coffee mug with the cracked handle, still warm from that morning, didn't even get to clear it out. Security had escorted them out like corporate burglars. Replaceable, that word again. I opened my laptop, logged into the HRIS portal, and double-checked Devon's executive folder. Permissions hadn't changed yet. The onboarding packet was still there, time-stamped, full of delicious contradictions. I downloaded a fresh copy. Then I opened my legal memo, reviewed the language, confirmed the submission date, exactly 18 business days before Devon's first login. I smiled and started building a timeline. Not a revenge plan, not yet, just facts, just receipts. The trick wasn't writing the memo, it was making it forgettable. Too bold and someone might question the timing. Too vague and legal wouldn't log it in the restructuring archive. It had to be exactly the right shade of boring, just enough to look like a mid-tier ops suggestion from a senior staffer trying to earn her keep in the power vacuum. It was a Friday when I wrote it. The kind of late winter afternoon where the fluorescent lights feel extra judgmental and the HVAC rattles like it's coughing up secrets. I closed my blinds, poured the last of my emergency bourbon-laced coffee from the thermos I kept under my desk, and cracked my knuckles like I was about to defuse a bomb. Subject line, preliminary framework optimization suggestions, Q2Q3, the body, 6 bullet points, each one worded with surgical blandness. Exploratory recommendation to consolidate data, review responsibilities across client ops and analytics teams in light of overlapping tool usage. Translation. I'm proposing the same restructure Devon will later claim as his own. Initial concept for streamlining process ownership by reducing parallel QA workflows. Translation. Cut the same heads he will, but do it first on paper. I attached a Gantt chart nobody would read, some dummy slides with market trends, and a cover note that read, early draft for future consideration, no immediate action required. Then came the important part. I CC'd 3 people, my director, the head of internal ops, and most importantly, her in chambers in legal. Erin owed me. 2 years ago, she botched a client contract renewal, and I caught it before it cost us $180K in penalties. Never told a soul, just covered for her, fixed the numbers, and told her to keep her chin up. Since then, we've been quietly trading favors like Cold War spies who meet in parking garages. That day, I sent the memo with no flair. Just a plain note, sharing initial draft. Figured it's smart to get this into the compliance flow. She replied 10 minutes later, logged, "Thanks. That was all I needed." Once legal logs it, it's dated, time-stamped, and technically part of the internal compliance record. No one could argue it wasn't real. No one would bother to read it unless given a reason. Which was perfect. Because in 3 weeks, Devon Langley would roll into Harper Smythe with his swagger and his golden parachute, start waving around his restructuring proposal like he invented efficiency. He'd gut the same teams, shift the same roles, and present the same vision I'd already buried under layers of bureaucratic oatmeal. And when he did, the clause in his contract, the one that said performance bonus triggered upon execution of a new restructuring initiative, would suddenly hit a wall. Because if the restructure wasn't new, if it had already been logged by someone else weeks before his first official login, then the clause wouldn't hold. I checked the timestamp twice, saved a PDF of the email thread, filed it under Langley preemption. Then I locked my computer, stood up, and stretched. Strategic growth, my ass. Devon thought he was playing chess, but I'd already moved my queen. Quietly. Early. And in this game, the first move doesn't make headlines. It just makes the checkmate inevitable. It was surreal watching my own words come out of his mouth, like some corporate ventriloquist act. Devon strode into the quarterly strategy sink with his usual sparkle, custom blazer, smug grin, and that I slept great and it's your fault if you didn't energy that makes you want to smash a Keurig machine out of spite. He queued up a PowerPoint deck titled Strategic Department Realignment Initiative in bold, minimalist font like he'd just cured inefficiency with Helvetica. And then he began. Word for word, bullet for bullet, he walked them through my proposal. The same one I'd written while hiding behind my blinds with bourbon in my mug and a pit in my stomach. Same slide order, same pivot points, same restructure suggestions. He'd cleaned it up, of course, swapped out a few buzzwords, made it shinier. Replaced redundant tool functions with workflow harmonization, consolidated QA threads with agile assurance pipeline. But it was mine. I sat there, 2 rows back, surrounded by execs nodding like hypnotized dashboard bobbleheads. Devon clicked through slide after slide, pausing just long enough to let the praise simmer in the air like stale cologne. The CFO gave him one of those tight-lipped smiles of approval and leaned over to whisper something to the CEO, who chuckled like a man imagining stock options multiplying. Me, I didn't say a word. When the deck ended, Devon closed his laptop with a dramatic little snap and looked around the table like Caesar admiring the crowd. That, he said, is how we win Q3. Applause. I forced a smile. Let it touch just enough of my face to register in the peripheral vision of the room. Devon caught it, misread it. On his way out, he brushed past me in the hallway. Didn't even slow down. Just tossed over his shoulder. Appreciate your support, Laura. But you can leave the heavy lifting to leadership now. I didn't answer, just kept walking. Slow, steady, straight back to my desk, where I pulled up the original memo, the one I'd sent 3 weeks before his official start date. I opened the version history, clicked compare. Every idea he presented already there, just older, less sexy, but time-stamped and logged with legal. I opened Devon's deck from the shared strategy folder. He hadn't even bothered to change the naming convention. Sloppy. I took a screenshot of my original memo's header, subject line, date sent, recipients. Then another screenshot of his deck's properties, creation date, last modified, author. The gap was there, 3 weeks, 3 legally binding weeks. I created a folder, named it Langley Execution Trail. Not dramatic, just neat. Added the files, the memo, the screenshots, the legal confirmation email, tagged them with today's date. Then I opened my journal, the one I kept buried in the fake bottom drawer where I also stored my old security badge and a bottle of aspirin labeled Boardroom Survival Pills. And I wrote, he thinks the storm starts when he pulls the trigger. But the lightning hit weeks ago. He's just too arrogant to hear the thunder. I closed the drawer, took a deep breath. Fury is loud, but strategy? Strategy is silent until it strikes. The 5th floor smelled like printer toner and leftover fear. That's where compliance lived, tucked between legal and procurement, like the middle child nobody brags about but everyone needs when the house catches fire. I hadn't been up there in months. Not since the Porter audit disaster that nearly torched our vendor agreements, back when a rookie lawyer named Erin Chambers nearly lost us a $2.3 million arbitration case because she trusted the wrong spreadsheet. I'd saved her back then, quietly, pulled the original vendor clause from my personal archive, flagged the hidden billing delta, and restructured the talking points so legal could spin it as a miscommunication instead of gross negligence. Erin had cried in the elevator after. I pretended not to notice, never spoken about it again. Until now. I walked past the open concept pods, compliance's attempt to look modern, and found her in her corner cube, chewing the cap of a green highlighter and glaring at a redlined NDA like it had insulted her mother. She looked up, blinked twice, then straightened in her seat. Laura, hey, everything okay? I didn't sit. Just handed her a manila folder. Inside, a printout of Devon's onboarding clause, his projected payout timeline, and the email thread from my restructuring memo. She scanned it fast. Her lawyer brain clicked into motion like a lawnmower on caffeine. By the time she got to the bonus clause, her forehead creased. I said nothing. Just waited. Her eyes landed on the sentence. Clause 9b. Performance-based signing bonus contingent upon successful initiation and execution of a qualifying departmental restructure. And on the HR timestamp. Executive onboarding signature. March 13th, 9:47 a.m. Then on my memo, initial internal submission. February 20th, 3:14 p.m. She exhaled like someone had just cracked a window in a locked room. This memo was filed before he signed. 17 business days, I said. She flipped the last page. Legals received tag stamped neatly at the top. Aaron tapped the folder once. Looked at me. This clause is void. I nodded. I know. If he tries to trigger it, you'll stop it. She hesitated. Laura, this is big. He's got the board's ear right now. I leaned in slightly, my voice low. Calm, it's not about stopping him, not yet. Just make sure someone reads this when the time comes. Her eyes searched mine. There wasn't fear in them, just that flicker of professional memory. The audit crisis. The save I gave her. The debt, still on the books. She nodded slowly. Want me to flag this for payout review? No flags, no escalation, just know it's there. In the system, and when someone, probably Devin, tries to pull the lever. I want legal holding the receipt. She smiled then, just the corner of her mouth. The kind of smile women like us trade across boardrooms, war rooms, and unisex bathrooms. The I got you smile. Quiet, steel-backed. I'll log it in the timing discrepancy queue. It won't trip alerts, but it'll route to me for final eyes. I nodded. Perfect. As I turned to go, she called after me. Laura, I looked back. You always this calm when someone's walking into a buzzsaw? Only when I know they sharpened it themselves. I walked back to my floor, letting the elevator hum fill the silence. Devin could parade his vision decks all he wanted. He could gut teams, rename org charts, even slap his initials on frameworks he didn't understand. When he tried to cash that check, he'd find a quiet lawyer with a quiet file, and a quiet rule that made the whole house of cards collapse on cue. Devin was strutting like a man who thought gravity was optional. Every hallway became his runway. Every meeting, a stage for his personal TED talk no one asked for. He even changed the names of our internal teams to nonsense, like velocity pods and customer resonance hubs. Old guard just blinked and nodded like confused grandparents at a dubstep concert, while the new hires, his hires, clapped like trained seals in tight blazers. By mid-quarter, he'd fired 4 more people. Most were mid-level staffers with perfectly decent performance reviews, but not enough shine for his taste. We need people who spark, he said in the last all-hands. Then he introduced a new alignment framework he called the Langley Ladder. Nearly bit through my coffee mug. I watched it all. Watched as he swaggered through the open office like a reality show contestant who didn't know the cameras had stopped rolling. He started sending out weekly company-wide memos titled Growth Vibes, Thoughts from the Top, paragraphs of nothing, sprinkled with phrases like disruption velocity and synergistic recalibration. Once, he used the word incentivize 3 times in a single sentence. He renamed the shared drive. Seriously, renamed it. From Operations Archive to Langley Vision 2025. I could have called him out. I could have forwarded the memo to the board, or HR, or even just CC'd him on his own contract clause with a sticky note that said, try again. But that's not how this kind of win works. See, Devin wasn't just trying to execute a plan, he was performing. And performance has a rhythm. If you interrupt it too early, they change the tune. If you let the song play out just long enough, let them lean into the crescendo, that's when you cut the lights. So I waited, smiled at his jokes, nodded in meetings, said things like, love the new direction, while discreetly archiving every revised org chart and timestamped Slack thread where he took credit for his restructuring. He started bragging more openly as the quarter rolled on. Once this bonus hits, I'm taking the wife to Santorini, told our VP of sales while waiting for a latte. Better reserve a boardroom and a champagne fridge, he joked to the CFO during budget planning. To me, he smirked and said, you'll love the bonus memo I'm submitting. Might even mention your help indirectly, of course. I just smiled, glad to have played a part. What he didn't know was that I'd already prepared my own memo. It wasn't flashy. No color-coded graphs, no inspirational quotes. Just one simple, methodical email. Subject, confidential Langley bonus clause review restructure precedents attached attachments. My original memo to legal, dated February 20th. Legal's time-stamped received reply. Devon's onboarding packet with the March 13th signature date. The side-by-side comparison of restructure slides, mine vs his. A brief summary. Clause 9b is inapplicable due to documented precedent. Payout not compliant with performance criteria. At the bottom, a polite note. For review prior to bonus approval discussions, please route through legal for compliance clearance. I saved the draft, didn't hit send, not yet, because Devon was still dancing and the music was still playing. But I could already hear the record skipping. The boardroom had that thick, corporate hush, like a library built out of money and consequences. 12 leather chairs, one long table polished to the point of self-reflection. At the head sat the CEO, David Trask, fingers steepled like he was posing for a profile shot in Fortune. To his right, the CFO, 3 assistants deep in his inbox even as he sipped still water from a bottle that probably cost more than my first apartment. Around them, directors, department heads, the usual suspects. And at the center of it all, Devon Langley. He wore navy. Power blue. Always did when he wanted something. His laptop gleamed like a stage light, hooked up to the 80-inch wall display. His deck was titled Q2 Impact, Catalyzing Strategic Transformation. It had an animated intro slide, because of course it did. I sat quietly in the back, not technically required to be there, but invited as a courtesy. Translation: expected to watch the coronation and clap on cue. I folded my hands in my lap, phone screen dimmed. Heart steady, no nerves, just the rhythmic hum of a long game clicking into place. Devon launched in. He talked fast, hands wide, eyes sparkling. Charts and metrics flashed by, churn down, engagement up, headcount strategically optimized. He pointed to org charts like Moses parting the Red Sea. Talked about cultural recalibration and initiative nesting. The board nodded, laughed in the right places. The CFO raised an eyebrow in the good way. Then came the last slide. Final bullet point. Restructuring initiative fully executed. Q2 milestone met. Boom. Devon clicked to black screen. Closed the laptop like it was a vault. Leaned back in his chair with the kind of casual confidence only people who have never been wrong a day in their lives can summon. The CFO looked over at Trask. Strong quarter. Trask nodded slowly. Impressive entry, Devon. Circle back on comp and incentive disbursement after the vote. Devon smiled, wide and bright, like a prom king who hadn't noticed the punch tasted off. I pulled out my phone, opened drafts. That email I'd prepared, 5 attachments, 1 quiet subject line, no flair. Just the facts. Subject: restructure initiation, timing Langley bonus trigger, no exclamation points. No dramatic language. Just the right chain of logic, the right chain of custody, the right legal contact copied. I hovered over the send button. Devon was still grinning when I tapped it. The email slipped into the ether. 3 floors down, Erin Chambers was eating a bland turkey sandwich at her desk when her inbox pinged. I knew her habits. She always checked flagged internal emails immediately, labeled them read. She saw the subject. Her eyes scanned the header. From Laura B. Legal intake CC. Erin Chambers subject. Restructure initiation, timing Langley bonus trigger, no noise. Just clarity. She opened the attachments. Memo, dates, clause, the old email thread. Her own reply from February. Every receipt stacked neatly like dominoes waiting for breeze. She didn't move, just stopped chewing. Upstairs, Devon was still talking. Something about streamlining legacy pathways and unlocking full-spectrum growth. Room buzzed with agreement. Half the board was already picturing their stock options doing cartwheels. But then the side door opened. Soft knock. Erin stepped in, binder clutched against her chest, eyes scanning the room like a sniper picking a perch. Apologies, she said, her voice calm, almost bored. Before we finalize discussion on incentive disbursements, legal has one item of clarification related to the restructure benchmark clause. Devon froze, watched his posture shift, just a hair. The lean in his chair lost some angle. His mouth twitched into a smirk that didn't reach his eyes, the calm before the thunder. I sat still, not blinking, not breathing heavy, just listening to the silence stretch like a rubber band pulled to the breaking point. Apologies, Erin repeated, her tone neutral as distilled water. One clarification before we finalize the bonus approval. She didn't make eye contact with anyone in particular, which made it worse. That kind of nonchalant focus only happens when someone walks in holding a quiet bomb and everyone in the room senses the fuse already burning. Devon's smirk tightened at the edges, but he kept his posture. He even leaned back a little, like he wasn't worried. But his hands, which had been resting casually on the arms of his chair, crept toward each other in his lap, interlocked, thumb rubbing thumb. A tick. Erin unlatched her binder and flipped it open with the precision of someone trained to dismantle egos with paperwork. She read from a single printed page, no preamble. Per Clause 9b of the Executive Compensation Agreement, any signing bonus tied to restructuring initiatives is rendered void if said restructuring was initiated prior to the executive's onboarding signature date. She paused. Let the words land. Devon blinked. Just once. The sound of his swallow was louder than it should have been. Across the table, the CFO turned slightly, brow creasing. Trask, the CEO, remained statue still, lips pursed like he was holding back a question or a curse. Erin continued. Per internal records, a departmental restructuring proposal was submitted on February 20th at 3:14 p.m. Reviewed and logged by legal the same day. He pulled out a printed email and placed it on the polished table with quiet finality. The timestamp glared up at them like a death sentence in 12-point Arial. Then she added another sheet, her own received and logged response, dated, initialed, and bearing the department's digital compliance seal. Not a casual note. Not a brainstorm. A formal, submitted memo, validated by the company's legal pipeline. And the executive onboarding signature for Mr. Langley, she said, eyes still lowered to the binder, was filed March 13th, 9:47 a.m. She closed the binder. Silence, not passive, awkward silence. The kind that hums, that charges the room like a static field right before lightning makes contact. One director reached for their water glass and missed the coaster completely. Someone's pen rolled off the table and wasn't picked up. Devon opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. There must be, he began, voice thinner than usual, some kind of misunderstanding. That proposal wasn't actionable. It was a draft, barely a framework. Erin didn't flinch. Intent to initiate is the standard, not implementation. Submission to legal for review constitutes documented intent. The clause is date-bound. He turned to Trask now, searching for backup. We're talking about a formality here. The board's seen the results. Trask didn't speak. Neither did the CFO, who was now staring at the binder like it had just recited his social security number. From my seat in the back, I could see Devon's confidence deflate, not with a bang, but with the steady hiss of pressure bleeding out of a man who hadn't realized the walls were hollow. The room stayed still. Erin adjusted her glasses. Given the clause dependency, payout of the bonus would not be compliant with the terms as written. That was it, not a recommendation, not a debate, a ruling. Devon's eyes flicked to me, just for a second. Just long enough to confirm what he already suspected, but hadn't been willing to believe, that I'd seen this moment coming long before he ever rehearsed his little victory lap in the mirror. I didn't smirk, didn't blink, just met his gaze with that same quiet patience I'd worn since he swaggered into my office and told me I was replaceable. In that moment, he didn't look like a VP, looked like a man halfway through a magic trick and realizing the rabbit had filed an HR complaint. There must be a mistake. Devon's voice came out thin, weaker than I'd ever heard it. No swagger, no charm, no spin, just the raw, stammering fear of a man realizing the floor wasn't a floor. It was a trapdoor. He turned toward the CEO again. David, come on. This memo, it wasn't official. It was exploratory. You've seen the impact numbers. The restructure worked. The board's seen it, hell, celebrated it. This can't be real. Trask didn't even blink. He didn't raise his voice, didn't flinch. Just gave a single nod in Erin's direction. Proceed, he said. One word, sealed fate. Erin, ever calm, closed her binder. She didn't look at Devon. She didn't need to. The binder did the talking. The CFO, who'd been stone-faced the entire time, exhaled audibly. A long, tired sigh. Like a man realizing the bonus he'd approved was now radioactive. He reached for his laptop, closed it with a soft click, and rubbed his temples with the heel of his hand. And then, slowly, quietly, the board turned. Not all at once. Just gradually, like a ship adjusting course after spotting an iceberg a breath too late. No anger, no yelling, just that heavy, collective stillness of people recalculating loyalty in real time. Devon sat frozen. For the first time, his mouth didn't know what to do. His hands twitched, then steadied. His jaw tensed like he might try to say something brilliant, one final spin, one last card, but whatever argument he had left evaporated before it reached his lips. Trask looked to the VP of HR and said, "Let's take 5. Devon, would you mind stepping out for a moment while we regroup?" That line. That polite little guillotine. Step out for a moment. He stood, robotic, gathered his things in slow motion. He wasn't looking at anyone anymore, not even me. He walked to the door without a word, and as it clicked shut behind him, the silence broke, but only slightly. Papers shifted. Someone coughed. The CFO finally reached for his water. I gathered my notebook. No rush, no triumph in my posture, just quiet finality. As I moved to leave, one of the older board members, Clarence, one who always wore navy and never spoke unless it mattered, caught my eye. He didn't smile, didn't speak, just gave a single nod. The kind of nod that meant we saw it, we know. And then I left. The hallway was silent. Devon stood alone near the elevator, hands stuffed in his pockets like a teenager caught sneaking out past curfew. His eyes darted up when he heard the boardroom door open, half expecting someone else. Someone to pull him back in, someone to rescue him, but it was me. He held my gaze for a split second, long enough for whatever pride he had left to die behind his eyes. I didn't stop, didn't smirk, didn't slow down. Just walked past him like he was office decor someone forgot to toss during spring cleaning. I hit the elevator button, waited. Behind me, Devon stood frozen, pale as printer paper, alone with the sound of his own unraveling. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped in, turned around. And the last thing I saw before they closed was Devon, still standing there, untethered, speechless, watching the only person in the company who had never raised her voice walk away with every ounce of power he thought he owned. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.